and now the digestive system. Okay, we're about to take a little trip through your body there, and what you're going to do is find out eventually what happens to food that does enter your body. Your body has to change it into something, so we'll eventually find out what. Your digestive system is a group of organs that work together to digest food so your body can use it. That's the sole purpose of the digestive system. You've got food on the outside, it's got nutrients and stuff that you need to get to your insides, and your digestive system is the thing that's going to break it down and get it to the inside of your system. And without that, you die. Okay, we're going to take the journey through the digestive system, and instead of starting with a bite of sandwich, you're going to use a cookie as our demo for the day. And we're going to start out with knowing there's two types of digestion. There's mechanical digestion, breaking, crushing, mashing food. And then there's chemical digestion, which in essence tells you what it's going to have. It's going to have chemicals that are going to be broken down even further so that you get the nutrients. Now, I've talked about nutrients, and what nutrients are. They're substances in foods that the body needs for normal growth, maintenance, and repair. And there's basically three major types of nutrients. And those are your carbohydrates, those are your breads, rices, pastas. There's your proteins, those are your fish, your nuts, and your meats. And there's your fats, that's your oils and your butters and things like that, and your cheeses. And your body needs all three to survive. And different parts of your body needs different types of nutrients. Your brain needs a lot of carbohydrates. Your muscles needs a lot of proteins. Your organs need a certain amount of fat around them to protect them. Okay, you all put something in your mouth like an M&M or a cookie or something, and candy bar. The minute you put it in your mouth, it starts to dissolve. And when it starts to dissolve like that, that's because enzymes are acting. When the enzymes act on it, it breaks it down. And the enzymes are always breaking it down through your body so it can be absorbed into the bloodstream and then used by your body. If the enzymes weren't there to break it down, it would just pass right through your body and you wouldn't be able to use it. So it's important that you have those enzymes in your mouth, and that's what we call saliva. It's like when you think of chocolate cake or banana pudding, your mouth gets watery. Well, those are the enzymes building up, waiting for that chocolate cake to get there. Okay, the journey of the cookie begins in the mouth, and the teeth, grind and mash and break up all the pieces. And it's important for two reasons. Chewing, it breaks them into small, little, tiny pieces that you can swallow. And then also, when you digest, the pieces are easier to digest. Otherwise, they'll pass through your system and you won't get the nutrients. This is called mechanical digestion. Okay, that's what that is. It's the first part of the digestive process is breaking it down in the mouth, and the saliva is the chemical digestion that happens in the mouth. So the salivary glands are located around the inside of the mouth, and that's when your mouth gets real watery, like I said before, when you think of something good to eat. And they contain the enzymes which mix with the food and break it down. And this is the beginning of the chemical digestion. Remember, the mechanical digestion, the beginning, is when your teeth actually chomp down on everything. Okay, once you get the food in like a nice, soft, mushy state, the tongue actually pushes the food to the back of the throat into this thing called the esophagus. And the esophagus is nothing more than the tube that connects your mouth to your stomach. Now, once you get it into the esophagus, you have no control over it. The esophagus squeezes it with a rhythmic contraction called peristalsis. And what it does, it just squeezes it all the way down into the stomach. It's an involuntary muscle. You don't control it, but it's going to squeeze it all the way down there to your stomach through that tube. Okay, the esophagus leads right down to the stomach, which is just like what you saw in the sharks. It's only it looks like a bag instead of a long tube, but it's got all the little nooks and crannies in there where the food gets mushed up, and that's what the mechanical part of the digestion is in the stomach. When the stomach contracts, it squeezes that in there. But then it also has chemical digestion, where the enzymes are released in their stomach acid, and that breaks down the food even further. Now, disgusting as this sounds, there is bacteria on the food that you take into your body. And the good thing is that the stomach kills most of that bacteria because of the acid in the stomach. Now, there is bacteria through your intestines that's good, that eats away at stuff, but the bacteria that you don't want, that gets killed by the stomach acid. Now, after a few hours, that cookie that you ate is going to turn into a soupy mix, and that mix is called chyme. And that's just, a glumpy, soupy paste stuff that's going to move on from your stomach. Now, when this food is soupy enough, and your stomach will know, it's then released through a sphincter valve at the bottom of your stomach into the small intestines. Now, the small intestines is small in diameter. In other words, it's only about 2.5 centimeters in diameter, which would be about as wide as your big finger. But it's really not small in length. It's about 20 feet long. And that's where you're going to absorb all your nutrients, in the small intestine. Now, inside the small intestines, it's covered with those finger-like things. They're called villi. And as the food, the chyme, goes by there, the villi absorb all the food that's been broken down. And there's more chemicals that are released, and the villi then sends that food that's been absorbed into the bloodstream or into your liver so it can be used later. But that's where your nutrients are actually going to be absorbed, in the small intestines. Now, between the stomach and the small intestines, there's a small organ, and it's kind of fish-shaped, I guess, but it's called the pancreas. And what the pancreas does, it produces an enzyme called insulin that regulates the amount of sugar that's going to go into your bloodstream. So that enzyme helps you, like when you eat a candy bar, it helps that sugar go into your bloodstream, and you kind of perk up. It breaks down that glucose into something you can use. Now, people that have diabetes, and you might have heard of that disease, have trouble creating that insulin for that sugar to get in the bloodstream. And sometimes they actually have to inject themselves with insulin shots for that very purpose. Okay, so one other thing that's located in that digestive area right there is the liver. And it's located on the right side, slightly higher than your stomach. And it's just a big piece of meat that's laying across your stomach there, like you saw when we dissected sharks. And the rats, you got livers in there that are pretty good size. They need to be. And an adult liver can be almost as large as a football. Now, the liver has 4 functions that help in digestion. The first, it makes a bile, and that bile helps digest fat. So that helps get the fat out of your, break down the fat that you eat. Excuse me. It also helps store nutrients. And one of the big things it does, it breaks down toxic substances in the blood. So your blood goes through your liver and filters out the toxic substances, which means that if you take a lot of toxic substances, and that includes alcohol, that's tough on your liver. And then you can get a thing called cirrhosis of the liver, and you can't get a new liver. Once that liver is gone, you're in trouble. And the last thing it does, it makes cholesterol for the cell membranes, the good cholesterol. Okay, remember, one of the things the liver does, it makes bile. And that bile helps break down fatty foods that you eat. Well, that bile is stored in a thing called the gallbladder until it's needed by the small intestines to help break down that food. Now, if you eat a whole lot of fatty food, then your liver makes a lot of bile, and that bile is stored up in there. That takes a toll on the gallbladder, and you can get a thing called gallstones, which is not good. So once the nutrients are broken down, they're absorbed into the bloodstream, and they're absorbed by the small intestines. The nutrients that are not needed right away are stored in the liver, and they're released later. So you don't have all the nutrients used. You're going to have some later on that you might, need for, when you don't eat a lot. Okay, we've gone through the teeth, through the mouth, the tongue pushing it down through the esophagus and down into the stomach, and then it gets broken up with some acids and enzymes released. The liver and pancreas add enzymes, breaks it down more, gets pushed into the small intestines. The nutrients are absorbed from the body that you want, that you need, and now we're reaching the end of the rope here. And whatever is too big to be absorbed in the bloodstream is pushed into a thing called the large intestines. Well, the large intestine stores, it compacts, and then eliminates indigestible materials from the body. Now, the large intestine is called large because it is large. It's about 7.5 centimeters, a little bit larger than your hand in diameter, but it's only about 1.5 meters, so it's only about 5 feet long, and it circles your stomach there. And that's where the elimination process is going to start. Okay, the undigested food that wasn't absorbed in the small intestine enters the large intestine in basically a soupy mixture still, and then the large intestine absorbs most of the water, and the solid mass that is left is called feces. Now that feces is then pushed into the last section of the large intestines, and that's called the rectum. And then finally the feces is pushed out of the body through an opening called the anus. So your body gets water from the absorption in the large intestines. When you're sick, and we'll talk about this in a minute, your intestines, they don't quite absorb the water. This whole journey for the cookie that you ate takes about 24 hours, and that's the whole digestive process from the mouth to the other end, and it's going to be about 24 hours on a regular basis.